Well, it's 3 o'clock, everybody,
All
and
right.
welcome to the third session of the Career Transition Workshop, hosted by the Career Search Network, careerdfw.org, and Stonebriar Community Church. And we're glad you're all here. We hope you get a lot out of this session because we're privileged to have Locke Alderson presenting today. And so we're streaming live on Facebook right now. So a couple of things I want to cover. The event will be recorded and is currently live on Facebook. And that recording will be, you'll be able to access it on Facebook and YouTube for others to view in the future. So you can pass that information on in your network, in each of your networks. If somebody you know or are networking with who's also looking for employment opportunities can watch it. On Facebook, it's under careerdfw.org, and on YouTube, it's under careerusa.org. That's the channel on YouTube, Career USA, so others can view it in the future. But we want you to be aware that participating in this event, being recorded and streaming live, if you post a comment in the chat box or in the comment box on Facebook, or you have your microphone or camera on, you're automatically giving consent for your comments, name, and picture to appear and be shared. We just want to make sure everybody's well aware of that. Because so that everybody can be aware that, you know, once you're on the net, you're on the net, you're out there. So we want to be sure you're aware of that. For this session, what we'd like to do is, if you're on Zoom, you can use the chat box to enter questions. What we'd like you to do is please begin your question with a question mark and then your name and your comment. That way, after the Locke finishes his presentation, as we go to the panel of experts that are going to help facilitate our Q&A session, we can ask them those questions and get responses for as many people as possible. If you're watching on the Facebook stream, on careerdfw.org, please enter your question in the comment field, and we will be monitoring that as well so that we can get to as many questions and concerns as possible. So today's agenda is going to look something like this. We have a message of encouragement from Steve Fisher, who is the Stonebriar Community Church's pastor on care ministries. And his mission is to help people with hope and encouragement and empowerment, especially during stressful times like this, where we're not only dealing with unemployment, but more and more people are dealing with it. And we're also dealing with this COVID-19 situation, which has people really stressed out. And Steve is a wonderful, loving guy. Steve is a licensed professional counselor. He has a master's degree in physiology and also has a degree in from Dallas Theological Seminary. And so he's a wonderful man who really is full of compassion and wanting to help people struggle as they go through their struggles. Then we'll have the presentation from Locke Alderson, and which is our main agenda item. Then we will have a turn with our Q&A with our expert panel, who I will show you here. We've got Rex Sowett, who is the one of the original founders of this workshop. He's a human resources manager, been director and high-level status for over 30 years. Locke Alderson, who's been a career consultant and is currently doing that. Oster Williams, the founder of searchforyouinc.com, and co-founder of the Career Search Network. Jeff Morris, who's the founder of Career DFW and CareerUSA.org. And then myself, I'm just a facilitator. So those guys have all the expertise. We just at those first 4 pictures you're looking at, you've got over 100 years of in-depth expertise in the field of recruiting and hiring. And so they give a unique perspective from the part of a hiring manager to help answer your questions when you're applying for a job. We are going to have a message of encouragement. Now, if you attended the session last week on Tuesday, this is the same message. And a couple of things. Steve got jammed up and didn't get a chance to do a fresh message for us. But Locke also commented that many of Steve's comments in this message, which we got a lot of positive feedback about, is very much in line with what Locke is going to present today. So this will just, it's a short message. We ask you to listen to it, and hopefully it will be helpful to you.
Hello, my name is Steve Fisher, and I'm the Care Ministries pastor of Stonebriar Community Church in Frisco, Texas. And I'm humbled and privileged to have been asked to say a few words today before the workshop begins. Hopefully those are words of encouragement, perhaps of insight. I just hope they bless you and inform you and help you. What we're going to do today, I think, is talk about time. I'm going to look at time in 3 different areas: the past, the future, and the present. And each of these time periods have what I would call a blessing side and a shadow side. And so let's begin to look at each of these time frames and kind of pull apart what I'm talking about. So let's take a look at the past. There is a blessing when your thoughts and your emotions wander back to things that have already occurred. You can derive some lessons learned, some wisdom when you look back and you begin to kind of assess what you did, what you didn't do, and hopefully that you improve and you learn something from it. I'm a big fan of the Green Bay Packers, and I remember as a kid growing up, there was a film clip on our local TV station of Vince Lombardi and Bart Starr. And Vince and Bart were going over game film, and I thought it to be really instructive. You could see the coach talk to the quarterback and say, hey, you did good here, or you missed the call on this one, but it was done in such a way that the quarterback learned. And I think that's not a bad habit to get into, is to kind of look back and have this honest reflection of, okay, I did this well, I didn't do this that well. And so it gives that opportunity for some learning and some discovery. The shadow side. The shadow side of living in the past is because you really can't do anything about it, can you? And there's this theory of anger, and anger grows in the space between what I desire, what I expect, and what reality is. And so anger is what we call a resolving emotion. It tries to bring up reality to what I expect. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. We have to take our expectations, connect them with reality, and then collectively bring them up. But if we spend too much time in the past, if we spend too much time trying to reconcile things that we can't, sometimes it's like running in quicksand, right? The harder you worry, the harder you think about what's gone on in the past, you just sink deeper. And so you get stuck. And so if we spend time in the past, it's opportunistic to be an instructive time, a learning time, a growing time. But if we spend all our time back in the past, we are stuck in the past. And there's generally that anger that is associated with that, because you can't do anything about it, but we keep trying to. And that takes away from the moment. It takes away from the present. So let's look at the second unit of time. That unit of time we'll call the future. And there is a tremendous amount of blessing to be able to spend time looking in the future. That's where hope lies. That's where perhaps new motivation. Okay, I want to get to here. That means I will take extra classes. I will go to extra workshops. I'll talk to extra people. But there's a sense of hope of this is where I'm going. This is where I can be. And many times that provides that hope and motivation to grow, to push yourself forward a little bit. It's a blessing to be able to do that. And for those who are Christians, it is really, again, the blessing of our Savior, that we are not confined to the mistakes or the sins of the past, that our Lord has taken those sins upon us, and we can have a better tomorrow than yesterday or even today. That's no small feat. We aren't stuck in Groundhog's Day. We can learn and we can grow and we can move forward with hope and motivation to find a way to move forward and not be stuck. The shadow side of living in the future too much is that's where anxiety grows. Because even though we're hopeful and even though we're motivated, we don't have any control. And when we spend too much time looking forward, we become anxious. And we become anxious in a fashion that is fear-based. Generally, we don't often look in the future with an abundance of confidence, sad to say, but we look with some fear, foreboding, some anxiousness. And so if you are spending a great deal of time looking in the future, what's going to happen, running scenarios out, uncertain of what it may bring, while you have a blessing in terms of identifying some motivating goals to achieve, but if you spend too much time back there, most often you just are reduced to a bundle of anxieties and a bundle of fear, and that's a very paralyzing set of emotions. So now let's move to the present, the blessing side of the present. That's how we can experience life. It's how we are able to feel with some degree of immediate gratification of friendships and loved ones and relationships and all of the things that go into our day-to-day that make life worthwhile. Eating a good cheeseburger, taking a walk, observing a beautiful painting, a piece of art, or listening to a tremendous piece of music, or maybe talking to a dear friend. All of the things that are present and current that I believe our God gives us so that we may be engaged in this life. So living in this present moment has the great blessing of being engaged in life and being able to receive the real-time blessings of a real and present God. The shadow side, there is a shadow side, I think. Because sometimes when we're in the present, we are absent, meaning the time goes by, but we are absent. We are just not present in day-to-day life. And therefore, for lack of a better word, we're wasting that time. That a day goes by, a week goes by, a month goes by, 3 months go by, a year goes by, and we've not engaged in anything. So the danger is of staying focused, of being in the present, is that you may be just so present that you're absent. You're not thinking about, okay, where am I going? You're not learning from where I've been. And really the opposite occurs of the great blessing that we have been given. For those who are believers in Christ, one of the great blessings of being present and engaged in your life is this is how we get to experience the third person of the Trinity, the Holy Spirit, for the great counselor, the great convictor, the great comforter, our scriptures say has been indwelt in us. And therefore we have the constant opportunity to listen to lean into a God that loves us, that cares about us, that never lets us alone. And so I pray that gives you great comfort. So each day brings us the opportunity to spend time in these three areas. When we're in the past, the question really is, and we'll spend time through a day in various pieces, parts of that time. And again, each have their blessings and each have their shadow side. And so we're asking you to be aware of that. Where are you? Where do you spend most of your time? And I think a distribution of all three of those is really important. So if you're spending time in the past, that has the opportunity to be full of worry and anger and trying to change things that simply cannot change. That's the shadow side. The blessing side is it's an opportunity to grow and learn, where you gain wisdom from. Most of life is not a cognitive ascent. It's iterative. It's trial and error. We learn. And so if you're not attending to that, I think you lose some opportunities for some wonderful life lessons, professional lessons. The second place we talked about is the future. The shadow side of the future is that you can become so overwhelmed with anxiety and uncertainty, and fear becomes the only place that you draw any of your thoughts from or your energy from. And that fear and that anxiety just locks you up. But the blessing side of looking in the future, that's where hope comes in, that we can have a better tomorrow than yesterday. That's where the opportunity to become motivated, to push yourself, to grow, to use the gifting that God has given you. And so again, the downside, the shadow side, is fear and anger. The upside is hope and motivation. And finally, the present, what we call today. The shadow side is that you could be absent, that you're not attentive to it, and you're wasting the moments that God has given us. And they're precious moments. The blessing of staying in today is to be present with your Holy Spirit, to seek the counsel, to hear the conviction, to provide the comfort. And so you're engaged. And that's my deep hope. After listening to these few words, that you do take a little time to take an inventory. Where am I spending the majority of my time? And if I'm spending it there, am I looking at the shadow side of it? Or am I giving the opportunity for a blessing to occur? And so I often say this, that life is hard. Not an original statement. But it's always harder when you go through it alone. And that's what I remind you. That if you have a faith, our scripture says a cord of three is the strongest. That you've got the Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. You have yourself. And one of the wonderful things I love about these networking opportunities, about what you are going to hear, what you're going to listen through, is that you're not alone. We have other people. So that cord of three is your own capacities, your own gifting, the power of the sovereign God and one another. And it's that cord that is the strongest, no matter what you're going through. I believe that if you hold with that cord of three, you're going to be fine. And the good people of this workshop, they are indeed good people and are here to help you, to serve you. And I pray that you take advantage of that. So again, a great privilege to just take a few moments and perhaps give you that different perspective of time in the three areas of time: our past, our future, and our present. And I pray that you are bringing the right focus, the right distribution of time, so that your blessings are abundant, and then you're able to share them with others. Wouldn't that be great? So again, I appreciate the opportunity to take a few minutes. I know you're going to have an incredible experience. And again, if there's anything we can do at Stonebriar Community Church, let us know. So see you soon. Bye.
Okay, that certainly was encouraging, and I would really like to, as he said, there are a bunch of good people in this workshop, and I'd like to be sure that I make you all aware of who they are. We have the founder, one of the founders are Rex Sowett, who's with us today. Gail Houston is one of the co-founders with Rex of this workshop that's been going on for 2 decades now. Locke Alderson is who you'll hear from today, is also part of this team, as is Gail Bridgman and Lori Davis. Foster Williams, who's here with us today, Jeff Morris, who is here with us today as well, and as I mentioned, also the founder of careerdfw.org. And then I'd like to also thank those at Stonebriar who support this workshop and this ministry for all of us. Steve Fisher, who you just heard from, who's the ministry sponsor for us. Karen Hawkins, who's the operations lead at Stonebriar and does a lot of the heavy work in the background. Jean Allen, who's the lead administrator for missional living at Stonebriar and takes care of a lot of the details that helps this workshop to take place. So really like to give a shout out and a thank you to all of them for all the hard work they do in making this workshop happen. So without further ado, I am going to turn this meeting over to Locke Alderson.
A lot of material. My email address is there at the bottom of the screen. But in addition to the information that's there, I want to tell you a little bit about me. I have lost my job. I can have said that about 6 times in my career. I won't count the times that I got let go after a contract came to an end. But that's part of my background. And when you do lose your job, it gives you a sense of loss because it's something that means something to you. It occupies a lot of your time in many cases. Okay, but the thought of being without a paycheck can be overwhelming. As Steve kind of mentioned in his previous information, a little thought and planning helps you get through some of those tough times. So what do you do when you've lost your job? Well, you're kind of at a crossroads. Again, you see there, you can go back. Not many of us are going to be able to go back to what we had. Although some of the people that are on furlough right now will be able to return to jobs. I know on only one occasion, I did return to a company where I was laid off, and that was with Siebel. And that was kind of important to me. But what do you do? Well, some of the times you focus on the past or the present or the future. As Steve mentioned, you can't go back. Kind of like getting in your car, looking when you get in to drive, you look in your rear view mirror. It's kind of tidy. Hopefully it's that way. And when you look out in front of you, it's kind of like this crossroads is standing in front of you. It's a lot bigger. The windshield is a lot bigger than the rear view mirror. There is a time of blessing that you can come through. And again, one of the verses of Scripture, and I am a Christian, and turning to Scripture has helped me through times when I've been laid off. And you will go through, and if you're like most people, a roller coaster of emotions. Those can range from anger, anxiety, and fear to hope and motivation for the future. Okay. Starts out with a kind of a job search for psychology. So what are you going to do? Well, take a deep breath and try not to worry. Again, that's part of what we're involved with, that we're here. Again, talk to your family. They're in it with you. Give them a status of where you are. Don't hide it from them, thinking, well, I'm ashamed or I shouldn't be do this, shouldn't have happened to me. Again, they're in it to help you and support you. You want to take a look at your finances. That's a critical element. Know what it's going to take to provide for you and your family. Put together a budget and try and live with it. A simple budget might consist of think of a house with 4 walls. Those are food, shelter, utilities, and transportation. Closed is just a sample budget. be found on an Excel spreadsheet. They have several personal budgets that you can use. As I said, and remember, the Lord has said in Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." And there's some of the things that you need to do. But while you're doing your budget, tracking your income, you need to put together what's going to take to pay your expenses. That'll help you establish a salary range that you'll need. What's the minimum that you want? What's your desired amount that you might like to have? Once you've done that, you want to put together that budget. And where do you get cash? You may be like I was at one of the times I was laid off. I had to borrow from my 401k. Well, there's some risks that you do that when you borrow from an IRA or a 401k before you're 59 and a half. It used to be you paid a 10% penalty on the monies that you withdrew. And then you had to, that income that you drew out, the extra money that you drew out was treated as income. I know when I borrowed $5,000, $500 was taken out for a penalty, and $1,000, $1,000, 10% or 20% was taken out as income tax. So you might think about that. If you pay them back, those rules have been waived with the pandemic that we're going through right now. You don't have to pay the penalty, and you have 3 years to repay that loan that you borrowed. If you haven't registered for unemployment with TWC, you need to do that. And I know it might not go far, but it does provide for groceries, certainly. You need to take a look at your health insurance needs, whether it's from COBRA, which is when companies lay you off, they need to extend COBRA to you, which you can extend your health insurance for up to 18 months. The COBRA premiums are expensive, but again, if you need the healthcare coverage, you might look at that. Look at your spouse's healthcare if she's still employed. Short-term insurance is available as well, and there are indemnity plans out there. If you have need of a healthcare advisor for insurance, I have one that I'll be happy to refer to you if you'll just let me know. He's someone that doesn't charge anything. I've worked with him for a number of years now to get me the insurance coverage that I need, because when I stepped down and retired in 2010, my wife also stepped down, but she wasn't 65, so she didn't qualify for Medicare. Another thing that you need to do is to do an honest reality check. You know, what's happened to you? Have you accepted what's happened to you? You want to look at things as they are, not how they should be or how you wanted them to be. In many cases, you can't go back to what you have. Although on one occasion, I did go back to Siebel, and that's one of the things we want to talk about when we talk about networking. But if you're out of a job, you need to accept the fact that you're unemployed and avoid sitting around the house feeling sorry for yourself. And remember this, as Steve Fisher said, you're not alone. You're not an outcast, and you're definitely not a failure. Think how you've handled changes in the past, how you've handled those challenges, write them down and reflect on them. I know I've gone through a number of things in addition to being unemployed at least 6 times in my career. I've had a brain tumor. When people say brain tumor, they think the worst. That was successfully removed after a 7.5-hour surgery. You hear about somebody engaged with cancer. Well, I've had cancer, been told that, and had successful treatment for cancer. And losing your job certainly is among those things. But writing those things down and reflecting back on them can help you look at the future. You may have to recalibrate your expectations. And certainly one of the things when you go through all of these things, another verse from Scripture stands out to me, and that's from Psalm 55:22. Cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken. So what are some of the steps that you need to take? Well, you need to determine whether you want the same kind of job or a similar job, and if not, what do you want to do? You can do a self-assessment, looking at your last job. What did you like about it? What didn't you like? What kind of management style do you enjoy working under? Do you like somebody who's a micromanager, looking over your shoulder every day, or somebody who gives you broad directions and lets you move forward? You can take things like the Myers-Briggs or the ProScan or Strength Finders and identify some of the things that you're good at and the things that you're not so strong at. Again, don't fall into another thing that you can do to find out your first steps is take a look at your performance reviews and your recommendations on LinkedIn. What have people said about you? What are your strengths, areas of your giftedness? You might want to write an article for the Reader's Digest. It used to be when you go to the doctor's office, there was a Reader's Digest there, and there was always an article Something like my greatest accomplishment. Well, what's been the greatest accomplishment in your career? What are you proudest of that you've done in the last 6 months? You might want to write your obituary. What do you want to be known for? Or write your ideal job posting. What's that ideal job that you're looking for? Even in today's economy, people are still hiring. And find your passion. I know I had a passion for helping those who were out of work and was able to get into that in 2001. What are some of the next steps that you need to take? Well, you may need to develop or revise your job strategy. With the changes in the employment right now, it's a little bit harder. You may have to take a bridge job. You may want to explore alternatives like self-employment or consulting. The next sheet that I'm going to show after this one will give you some of that information, some of the advantages of being an employee versus being a consultant or self-employed. You need to ask people for help, okay? Let people know that you're looking for a job. Had a friend who was out of work for at least a year, met a neighbor in the alley behind the house. The guy asked, are you still looking for a job? And yeah, because they hadn't contacted each other. And he was, interviewed the guy and hired him. You need to network. Let people know that you're looking. To find a job, people need to know that you are looking. That means telling family and friends, neighbors and acquaintances, just about everybody that you meet. And don't burn bridges behind you. While it's a good idea to write down all your gripes about your last job, your last boss, your last coworkers, and to write them down, if you do it on your computer, don't print it. I mean, print it out, but don't send it to that boss. Take it outside and burn it. It's very helpful to burn that. You need to be able to answer the question the hiring manager is going to ask, if not directly to you, they're asking in the mind, why should we hire you? What are your strengths that you bring? You need to make finding a job a full-time job, not sitting around watching television or feeling sorry for yourself. You need to be aware of who you are in the present. And how have you dealt with change? This is one of the things that Rex mentions. He did his first resume on a portable typewriter. I know I did the same thing with mine. Some of the changes that you may have dealt with, and this is one of the reasons that people tend to look at older workers as dinosaurs. They haven't kept up with technology. Think about the yield sign. If you say it's still yellow, it's been a red and white one since 1985. How about a car phone? A car phone used to be a brick that sat on your transmission dump. Many of us are on our 5th or 6th or 7th cell phone. How about hard-sided luggage? Many of us remember when we had it. Now we have soft-sided luggage, although hard-sided luggage seems to be coming back in vogue. And there are some advantages to be older workers, being over 50. They have experience and maturity. They tend to be reliable and stable and have practical knowledge that younger workers may not have. I know as a recruiter, if you would ask a recruiter about a company called Mostec that I worked for in my career, it went out of business in '83. But at the time that I worked there, it was the world's leading producer of random access memories for computers. What about age discrimination? Well, age discrimination isn't just limited to age. There really is still discrimination around. So you need to ask yourself the question when you encounter it, is this a company that you'd like to work for? And sometimes you'll need to recalibrate your expectations. This is that chart that I mentioned that you might want to look at, being an employee versus an independent contractor or self-employed. The biggest difference is in insurance and taxes. As an independent contractor or self-employed consultant, you need to pay your own Social Security taxes as well as those of the employer. So it almost doubles what you pay. And thinking about health insurance and benefits, you need to provide for your own in many cases. As I say, this packet is part of the slide deck. If you want it, I'd be happy to send it to you if you'll just send me an email. We all know what the economy is today. It's not good. Back in February, the unemployed in Dallas area was 2.9%. It's jumped up now, where it's closer to 20% nationwide. 1 in 4 workers are out of work. Dallas was one of the top locations in the country for developing and finding a job, and it's still that way. But don't think because somebody isn't responding to your postings or your emails or your job applications that you're not being considered, or that you've done something wrong. It may mean that the person you tried to contact isn't there anymore, or didn't get back to you because they're overwhelmed with the work that they have, making up for those people that used to be there. And remember that you can't do much about the past, and you have some control over the future. You can't change your age or your sex or your minority status. The factors that you can control are your health and first impressions. First impressions when you meet somebody are vitally important because they're going to make a decision about you very quickly and label you. So what are employers really looking for? Well, you notice that one apple in the barrel tends to be a bad apple. Employers don't want to hire the wrong person because bad hires cost money, budgets are still tight, and the employment process still taking a lot longer than it used to. They want candidates who kept their skills current. How long has it been since you've taken a class on LinkedIn or some other technology in your field? Companies want to choose the A players, the high achievers. I know when I was with Siebel Corporation, the message from Tom Siebel's office was said that he was only looking for A+ players. What you need to do is to be able to show that you have the right training, skills, and experience. You need to also show that you're willing to do the job and can hit the ground running and contribute to the success of the company. And do you fit with the culture of the company? Do you have some flexibility, some energy, some enthusiasm? These are all factors that enter into the equation. One of the things that really employers are looking for, and as a recruiter, I frequently encountered this, they're looking for that mythical purple squirrel, the perfect candidate. And recruiters identify that character as one who's almost mythical. Occasionally you'll find a top candidate, but they're the perfect mix of skills and experience and training and are willing to work for peanuts. When I encountered that with hiring managers, I would frequently say, you know, that's a tough assignment you've given me. I have identified 3 or 4 candidates I'd like you to take a look at while I'm still looking to find your ideal candidate. And frequently, in fact, most of the time, they selected one of those candidates to actually pursue. Sometimes you may have encountered something like this, the resume black hole. The internet made it possible for you to send out multiple resumes in a single day as opposed to printing them out, stuffing an envelope, putting a cover note with it, addressing the envelope, putting a stamp on it, taking it to the mailbox. Because you can send out with the internet. Well, companies have adopted applicant tracking software to weed through and sift through all those resumes that they get. Because Google, is just as an example, gets 20,000 resumes a week. That's over 1 million resumes a year, and yet they only hire about 5,000 people. Let's touch on resumes briefly. Rex is going to talk about that in a couple of weeks. Why do you need a resume? Well, first, it's a piece of advertising to get them to call you. How many of you have received credit card applications in the mail? And what happens to most of them? If you're like I am, they end up in the trash. Sometimes it's a script for the interview. Frequently, a hiring manager will look at a resume. Let me look at your resume one last time. Hopefully, they've done it before they get to that point and come back to the first page. So that first page is going to get double exposure. And lastly, it's a reminder of who you are after the interview. When I had my own recruiting firm here in Dallas, I had one company that interviewed 40 candidates. Mine was one of those. He made it to the second round of interviews, but how that manager was able to recall any of those candidates, I don't understand, except that he might have taken copious notes and the notes on the resume. You want your contact information to be readily available and make sure that it's correct. Double check the numbers and the addresses, because I have a tendency to transpose digits. It's something I easily do with 2-fingered typing. So you want to check those to make sure that they're correct. You need a headline and a summary. The headline is kind of like the marquee on a movie. If you wanted to see a current movie and it's not on that marquee, you're not going to go to that movie theater to see it. And your summary needs to summarize your already summarized information in your resume, but it also needs to share some of the accomplishments that you've achieved. And it should support the headline that you've got. So you want to tailor the resume to the job that you're applying for and give examples that demonstrate the measurable results that you've achieved because they add to your credibility. And summarize your older experiences. If it's older than 10 or 15 years, segregate it out into a separate section called prior professional experience. Just list the company name, your job title, and perhaps your experience, one of the accomplishments that you've had. This is about accomplishments. Companies ask that, well, what are some of those measurable results? You notice the last one down there at the bottom, or even people that have accomplishments on their resumes. So does it tell a complete story? What was the impact or significance of this? What resulted from the activity? Some people talk about star stories or STAR stories, or what was the situation, the task, or the action taken, and the result. Well, those are some of the areas that you can take a look at: your performance reviews, your LinkedIn profile, what people have said about you in the recommendations, and where possible, start with an active verb and use numbers and percentages. Sometimes that's not possible, so you can do before and after comparisons. And what were the results in terms of saving money or making money? Make the company more competitive. But how do you keep the momentum going? Well, first, you want to take one day at a time. You need to take care of yourself for first impressions. I mentioned that I know I took a detour in my career to go into sales. I could meet people more easily and improve that first impression. And again, my boss said to me, they're going to make a judgment about you whether they listen to your presentation in the first 30 seconds that they meet you. You need to put together your game plan, what you're looking for, what you want to try and accomplish. What's your goal with an interview? Is it to get a job? Well, ultimately it's to get a job, but maybe it's just to get the second interview, to meet people face to face after a phone interview or a video interview. You need to keep a calendar, a daily calendar, a weekly activities calendar. I know when I left my last company and retired from Oracle Corporation, I turned in my computer. It's possible that it's still in the closet, and I sent it to my manager, possibly in that closet, and she forgot to turn it into Oracle. Some of you have a phone phobia, afraid to talk on the telephone. Believe it or not, even though I worked as a recruiter for 41 years and a career consultant, and doing that for 19 years, I still have a phobia about the phone. So envision what the person on the other side of the phone is going to look like. Write out a brief script of what you want to try and say. Look them up on LinkedIn, see if you can find their picture. It's helpful to identify with people with their pictures. You need to still list and be able to come up with your strengths and weaknesses. Companies still ask those kinds of questions. What's your greatest weakness? I know if somebody asks me that question, I say I tend to be impatient with meetings that don't have an agenda, but I've learned to listen to the other people so I can gain their perspective and contribute accordingly. You need to build a support structure, infrastructure. Attend some of those meetings, whether it's on Zoom or when it gets back to face-to-face. Your neighbors and friends, your spouse, people in a like background, and you need to network. Another thing that you need to do is to trust in the Lord, from Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and don't lean on your own understanding. And in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Networking is a vital part of finding a job. Perhaps 40 to 80% of the jobs that you're looking for will be because you know somebody or they know somebody. This is a chart that I got when I was with Lee Heck Harrison. You can see the different percentages are there. So what is networking? It's all about. It's an exchange of information or services among individuals or groups. And it cultivates relationships for employment or business, using personal contacts to meet people. And it's the key to piercing the hidden job market, where as many as 50% or as much as 50% of the jobs are hidden. Where do you start? You start now. You should have down your 30-second commercial. It's something that you want to introduce yourself by. You can attend unemployed groups. It used to be that you could attend them each week. Now you may want to attend groups like Career DFW each Friday or Frisco Connect, which are online. You want to attend professional groups like the CPAs or the American Training Development Society, Financial Executive Networking Group, or marketing groups. Business and service groups like Kiwanis or Lions Club, Knights of Columbus. Each of them have that. Alumni groups, the Chamber of Commerce and Business Development organizations of Party City, alumni groups. Some companies are now forming alumni groups, and meetups online. Having an accountability group or an accountability partner. You want to become an employer referral, which happens with networking. I know my last 5 jobs that I had were because I knew somebody or somebody recommended me for the job. Gail Bridgman is on the panel with us. One that recommended me for Lee Heck Harrison. I hadn't even put together a resume when I got the job offer. I had to put together a resume so that they could hand it over to personnel. And you want to be prepared for interviews, both face-to-face and informal interviews, and today it's even video interviews. You want to practice the interview questions, both the answers and questions that you're going to have. Write out a list of the questions that you want to ask, that you feel that you're going to be asked about in your career. You need to be prepared about the company, do some research. The worst answer you can give when somebody asks you, what can you tell me about our company? Well, I don't know. I know that you do something. Wrong answer. You want to be honest and positive, and don't badmouth the former employers. One of the things that you can do, I mentioned about writing the letter about all your experiences. They're negative, take it outside and burning it. But you don't want to send it to the person that's involved. And you never know when that former employer or one of your former coworkers is in the next cubicle to the recruiter or hiring manager. You want to extend, bring business cards and bring extra resumes. You want to be courteous to the gatekeepers. It's a face-to-face interview, because I know Rex, when he was hiring, would frequently go out as he walked the candidate back out. The receptionist would frequently ask the receptionist after the candidate had left, what did you think of the candidate? Not so much about their technical skills, but how are they in terms of a fit with the company. And informational interviews, you go to an informational interview, it's not to ask for a job, it's to find out information or get an opinion or advice. Can turn into job interviews when companies say, we've been looking for somebody like you. Would you have any interest in interviewing for the job? And sometimes you get into a job interview and you know it's gone south in the first 5 minutes. You can ask the recruiter or the hiring manager, well, you know a little bit about my background, who should I be talking to? You want to convince them that you're not a risk. I mentioned that hiring managers are risk averse. I want to touch on LinkedIn. I know there's a session, I did one earlier this afternoon on LinkedIn. Well, why should we be aware of LinkedIn? Well, it's the #1 recruiting tool the hiring managers and recruiters are using to find and to vet candidates. Your profile is your homepage and similar to your resume, and they should be in sync with one another, not disagree where there's major differences between the two. You want to try and get to be an all-star, which is the top rating that you can have for your profile by having a complete profile. Your headline, it's the job titles that you're seeking. If you don't put a title into your headline on LinkedIn, it's going to default to the last job title that you had from your last company. You can have multiple titles there as well. You have 120 characters there to play with. In your settings, when you first log on to LinkedIn, you can go to your settings, and one of those settings is for clicking on new, open to being new job opportunities. That allows you to list 5 different job titles that you're interested in. Once you've done that, it will be on your profile, and by clicking on your profile, you can edit it and change that when you click on the blue pencil. Your contact information needs to be in the first 2 lines of your summary or your action section, your about section. Reason being, the more clicks that somebody has to make to try and find you or to contact you, the less likely they are to do it. You can have your contact information in multiple places on your resume, how to get in touch with you, with your phone number or your email address. All of your education needs to be there. Many of the profiles that I've seen on people just talk about their degree that they may have achieved. But you need to add the training and development that you've taken, the webinars and seminars and workshops that you've attended. Keep your skills current. Another thing about your contact information, you need to have your career interest there. And your activity on LinkedIn adds to your activity, to the points to your overall evaluation for the algorithm. Another thing that you could do in terms of your employment section, you can have your company and your dates and location, your title. Titles can be amplified. If it's not clear what you've done, or it's not the title that's used in industry, you want to amplify that and explain it. But you don't want to exaggerate what you did. Possibly like a CPA or an accountant. What kind of accountant were you? What kind of a recruiter were you at a particular company in your experience section? When you look at somebody's profile, and this is mine, you have 6 to 10 seconds to make a decision about those people. You notice a couple of things about mine. Got my name. You want to use the name that people normally would call you by or that you'd like to be called by. And notice under mine, it has my headline. I have 120 characters there. The contact information section I've got there. The job opportunities, you know, there's the different job titles that I might consider. And see details offers you a chance to add locations to that as well and what kind of job you're looking at. I've opened it up to all LinkedIn members, but you can narrow that down to just having recruiters having a look at it. Jumped over that, sorry about that. One of the things I mentioned, when you go to your settings and look at those, let recruiters know that you're open to opportunities. You notice the arrow that I'm pointing there, you can add up to 5. And there is some artificial intelligence with that. As you start to enter something like recruiter, there's different types of recruiter that you can use those titles, or accountant, or financial analyst, or titles that you can use. Okay, searching for jobs, you have 2 search boxes up there at the top that are pointed the arrows. And what are you looking for and the where you're looking for. If you put something in the what, like a recruiter, and don't put anything, it will default to the United States if you click search. You want to add the location, otherwise you're going to use a filter. Notice there's a jobs alert tab there as well that you can turn on. Mine is turned off in that particular instance. And once you've done that and done your search, you want to go to the filters section. I always recommend that people change from any time to the past week, because normally the first response to a LinkedIn posting or any posting on a job board is within about 3 minutes. And there can be as many as 300 or 400 people that apply in the first hour. Taking a look at the easy apply on LinkedIn, if you do that, it will send your profile. And profile is kind of static and may not be tailored to the job. Some of the easy apply will allow you to post a resume as well. It's a little bit more customized. You notice the different types of jobs that are available and locations, and the filters for companies, industry, and job function. Because even for recruiters, there are management jobs for recruiters, and some are business development or sales in different areas. Sometimes that falls within human resources. The experience level, which is the next one, excuse me, go back a minute. The experience level allows you to determine what level it is and gives you some indication of what salary level it's at. Internship is just what it sounds like. Somebody who's in school, perhaps they're getting school or just finished a degree, like a foreign student on an H-1B visa, they can have up to 3 internships to gain practical experience. Entry level, generally what it sounds like, typically right out of school. An associate is usually 1 to 4 years, 1 to 5 years of experience. Mid-senior is about 5 to 15 years experience, and then the management level positions. Wrapping up, wait a minute, this is looking at your profile, looking at people on your profile. You can look at people on your profile through looking at people. Notice that there's a people tab. It's got a down arrow on it right there. That's how you can do that and look and find people. You want to look at them to see if there are words in their profile that might apply to yours if you don't show up when you do a search for your kind of position in the search box up there. I know mine used to appear in the top 2 screens when I was active in recruiting. I now don't show up until usually 10, 12, 15, somewhere down in that range. As we wrap up, we want to talk about possibly reinventing yourself. If you're doing, you want to identify things that you're doing wrong and stop doing it. If you're sending out 50 resumes a day, the response on the internet, you're not getting any results, maybe cut down to 5 and tailorize or customize each resume that you send out. And don't apply for jobs where you're not qualified. If you don't meet 75, 80, 85% of the qualifications, it's probably not going to be a match. So your time may be spent elsewhere and more effectively. You want to tweak your resume, and on LinkedIn, because activity on LinkedIn is one of the criteria that gives you points, gives you values. And tweak your resume. If it isn't getting the results, change some things. Even if it's just to customize the headline with the job title that you're applying for, and a couple of bulleted accomplishments below your summary paragraph. Using LinkedIn, you can also identify who your opposition is or who your competition, and use some of the verbiage that you find to improve or optimize your profile. You want to try and don't want to try and boil the ocean. Having a generic resume just doesn't work these days. You want to have a laser focus. It's like taking a piece of paper and a magnifying glass outside today and starting a fire. You get that focal point on the paper and it gets hot, and that's what you're trying to accomplish. You want to touch bases with your contacts every 4 to 6 weeks. If they haven't heard from you, it's a good idea to drop them a note, something like, I wanted to just give you an update. I've had some initial successes, but not quite the opportunity I've been looking for. If you should hear of something, I'd welcome the opportunity to follow up on that. Or do that with a phone call to keep them involved. I know I sent out a Christmas card list to my former boss when I was laid off from Siebel. That was in December well, actually the end of November of 2003, 2004, January, he called me and said, would you have any interest in coming back on contract? Well, and unfortunately, the next day he called me back and said that the CFO had said no more contractors. He changed and said, would you be interested in coming back full-time? And I was reemployed within a week. You want to become an employer referral and network. Reason for becoming an employer referral is employer referrals get extra attention. When resumes came down from Tom Siebel's office, we had to give an answer back, why or why not. We weren't interested in the candidate. And employer referrals get extra attention. If somebody has referred you into an employer referral, there may be a reward for them, and the recruiter may have to get back to you and explain why or why not they were qualified. Participate in meetings and networking. Give and you receive. The volunteering, volunteers seem to disappear. When I know with one of the groups I was with a DFW career focus group, our volunteers used to disappear and we didn't see the same people. Sometimes 6 to 8 weeks and they're gone because they volunteered and the volunteer position led to a full-time position. You want to send thank you notes to everybody. When I got thank you notes as a recruiter to distribute them to the others that have been on the team, I have other things to do than being your social secretary. So send a note to everybody. And include some fun things in your calendar. Don't just make finding a job your sole job that you have. Put some things in your calendar. Maybe it's going out and getting an ice cream cone, going to the park for a swing now that the parks are back open, even to the pool. And keep up technically. What have you done to keep up with it? The community college courses are available to you now, are still available. They're online as well. And add humor to your life. I think that wraps it up. John, we're back to answering questions. If there are any questions before we go to the panel. If anybody is interested, send me an email to lockealderson@gmail.com. Say that you saw it on Career Transition Workshop, and I'll be happy to send you the slide deck. John, we're back to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Locke. Covered a lot of ground there. And a lot of good information as well. We do have some questions. So what I'm going to do is I am going to share my screen and let you take a look at the people who will be entertaining your questions. I will be handing out questions to the participants you see here. And Rex is online with us, of course, Locke, who you just heard from, Foster Williams, and Jeff Morris. And so I'm going to take that away and see if I can. Locke, one question I wanted to direct to you, and it came up on the Frisco Connect meeting we had earlier this morning. Most of you highly trained professionals tell us to customize our resume to the position that we are applying for as much as possible. That is addressing the requirements and the needs that the job description gives us. And so that means that you should probably have a master resume on file with everything you've done so that you can copy and paste and put together a new resume for a specific position you're applying for. And I think that's particularly helpful if you're changing focus from what you've done in the past and transitioning to another functionality, and you're trying to move your movable, I'm missing the
experience.
Huh? Your transferable skills.
Okay. Well, do I have 10 minutes to answer that one?
Well, no. I'm taking 10 minutes to ask it. But
complex question. I do advocate and strongly recommend customizing a resume. It can be as simple as changing the title of the job, the marquee that I mentioned, to the job title of the position you're applying for. Your summary paragraph, if you have a summary paragraph or bulleted items, should include at the bottom of that a couple of bulleted items, whatever, a couple of accomplishments that support your headline. If that's all you do to customize a resume, that's great. It usually works because that first third of a page on a resume is what recruiters tend to look at. If they find what they're looking for there, they'll go down and read the rest of it.
Yes.
Changing career fields, that's a different kind of thing because most resumes are reverse chronological. Probably 95% of the resumes that Rex and Foster and I have seen in our careers are reverse chronological, starting with your most recent job. However, there is something called a functional resume, which lists your functions. I know I have a hybrid resume, which combines functionality and with a calendar, with the employment dates on the bottom of it. Again, recruiters tend to dislike functional resumes because they don't say where you did it and when you did it. So if you use a functional type resume, you need to include the dates where you did those things. But that functional type resume will allow you, or hybrid resume will allow you to bring up certain skills that you may add, certain experience, some certain talents that you have. You can list those first. Perhaps it might be recruiting or employee relations or human resources or compensation and benefits or training and development. If I get that kind of a situation, I'll bring that box, that list of characters, that paragraph, if you will, to the top of the resume and then order it that way. But that's a way to change career fields. And Rex and Lori are on the call. They can, and Foster's on as well.
Well, I'll throw this out to Rex, Foster, and you and Jeff, because part B of that is if you have resumes out there on the different career boards like Career Builder, Indeed, et cetera, and you have a resume posted on your LinkedIn profile, you got to managing all that is a big task because you don't want anything to contradict what you've already got posted.
Well, I wouldn't use the word contradict. If it does contradict, yes, you got to be careful about that. But what you should be doing is so that the resumes that you might have out there or your profile on LinkedIn are in sync with one another. They don't disagree.
Right.
You don't have to say the same thing, but they cannot disagree.
Okay.
I've always had the point that you should have a 10-page resume, a 15-page resume, everything you've ever done since high school, and you have all the bullet points and all the detail. And then that way, when you see a job description, you just start going and you start eliminating everything that doesn't relate, because you want to make it so simple for the recruiter that they go, yeah, this is exactly what we're looking for. If they don't ask about it in the job description, don't stick it in don't go, well, these are other things they may like to see. No, you're trying to get them to call you on the phone or reach out via an email. And to do that, you've got to make your job description and your resume match.
Very good.
John, let me add into that as well. The way that I take a look at the LinkedIn profile and the resume, the LinkedIn profile is your foundation. Your resume is your penthouse. If you don't have a very strong foundation that you can add, and I'll take a look at accountants, cost accounting, budget analysis, budget forecasting, all of those things that might be show a good profile of your career. You can then use your resume to get that laser focus that that Locke talked about. Customizing your resume, and I'll bring this up to the team as well, and then I'll turn it back over to you. Do recruiters know when a canned resume is being submitted? The answer to that is absolutely yes. What I'm floored at is, does the hiring manager know that they're reading a canned resume? Absolutely, positively, yes. So it really, the custom design and crafting that you can have with the resume for the position is so strong. And I'll turn it back over to you, John.
Thank you, Rex. Appreciate it.
Excuse me, John, can I just mention something to tag on to Jeff and Rex?
Sure, Laurie.
Oh,
So I heard Jeff say, and I've heard, a lot of people talk about matching the job description to your resume or vice versa. But one thing I would caution you on, and I see this quite often, more often than then I would prefer to, but it's seeing the job description in the body of the resume, and it's verbatim. Like, the candidates don't even change it to say, you know, each bullet that they did something. They just take the job description. So I would discourage anyone that's taking the job description and actually copying and pasting. And believe it or not, they do that.
Yeah. Okay, that's great advice, Lori. Yeah, those are the kind of shortcuts that can really, get you into the do not follow up pile,
Yeah, like Rex says, we recognize a canned resume. We can recognize
Right.
when someone's taken a job posting and copied and pasted it.
Absolutely. Well, let me ask I'm glad you're here, Lori. I didn't notice. I was too busy doing other things. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
Let me ask the panel, personal responses from recruiters are so rare. Is there a better way to have recruiters call you back? Lori, you got any thoughts on that?
Hit your space bar, Lori.
Yeah, I had to unmute. Sorry. So for me, it's amazing, isn't it? It's interesting because it's interesting because I reach out to a lot of candidates, and as recruiters, we say a lot of candidates do not reach back out to us. So, and I think where the connection comes in is, as a recruiter, for me, my main goal is I need to find candidates that match the job requirements for my clients, right? Or for my hiring managers. So I will absolutely call if an applicant looks like they meet the qualifications for the job that I'm recruiting for. But I will say that we do get a lot of applicants, and I know myself and my team, we definitely try to reach out to people and thank them, even if they are not a good match, but I know that doesn't happen often. So, but I would just say, if you've applied for a position and you haven't heard, it does not hurt if you can find on LinkedIn, you can most often find the recruiters for those companies, and it wouldn't hurt to go out and, and just check and say, hey, I applied for such and such a position, have you seen my resume? Are there any thoughts on it? And things like, and things like that.
Any feedback, right?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt because, and most, I think, folks in the audience today too, when you're working, you're quite busy, and sometimes you can't get to everything that you would like to be able to get to. So sometimes it's helpful if the candidate will if they would check in. And if you try multiple times and you don't get a response, I mean, I realize that does happen, but I would definitely try and see if you can find a connection in the company to reach out to.
Okay. Well, here's one for you, Rex. Will Hutchinson wants to know, does resume writing change depending on whether you expect the resume to be scanned by software or a human?
The answer to that is absolutely positively yes. If technology, and that's such a genius question. Thank you for asking. If you have to overcome and impress the technology, which is the applicant tracking system. The applicant tracking system looks at keywords. It's a dumb technology because all it does is count generally keywords to get you to the next level. And that helps us get, for example, 511 resumes down to the top 10%, for example. For the recruiter, what I take a look at now is context and content. For example, John, I'm now taking a look at, for those individuals that are in sales, I'm looking for things like, how did you beat your quota? What was your new business development activities? How did you lead your team for new product launches? And what percentage did you increase, for example, revenue for that company? So that is now the human side, context and content, versus the applicant tracking system that tends to do a nicer job getting down from 500 candidates to maybe the top 25.
Right. And Dolores Scott William responded in the chat to you, and so you may want to get it together with Dolores and pursue that a little bit. She has an example.
John, one other thing that I want to mention is Rex has got a session on resumes coming up in about 2 weeks or 3 weeks, Rex.
Well, that's the question.
Yeah.
That's the question I've been texting and emailing while Locke was presenting. Is it Rex or Lori is next week?
I'm on next week. And
Okay. Just wanted to confirm that.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got the information on a slide for that as we get to the end of this, session. Foster, there's a question for you. What are the networking practices that you must avoid?
One thing you want to avoid is not to allow the fear from not having a job over. Sometimes we recruiters get an email each day. We get a call. We get overdoing that will drive us away. We recruiters want to, as we say in the recruiting world, put a butt in the seat. That's what we want to do. And we are more your advocate than we are against what you're doing. A lot of times we get thrown under the bus for a lot of things that we don't do. But when you're networking, don't overdo it. Don't become that desperate candidate, because no one can even help you at that point. We kind of shy away a little bit of helping you when you're desperate, because we know that, oh my goodness, if you're driving me crazy, you're going to drive Locke crazy. Want to meet Locke? No, I'm scared to have my name attached to you, because if I introduce you to Locke, then Locke's going to say, Foster, what are you doing sending me this crazy person?
Okay. And any other major faux pas that that can affect your being an effective, that can impute your being an ineffective networker?
Yeah. Well, one thing, John, and I think I've heard Jeff say this as well. Networking, the terms networking, connection, and relationship all mean different things. But you want to get to one thing of those three things, which is relationship. If someone asks me for a favor in the network and they get to me, and I give them that favor or that connection equity, and I don't get a thank you from that, a thank you or a Rex, how can I help you? Right. That now is the relationship exchange that Jeff, Lori, Locke, and Foster all have, because Foster's the networking mayor of Dallas, and he gets so many requests that my expectation now is not only thank you, but also, Rex, how can I help you? And then following up on that.
Yeah, I agree. The key is reciprocity. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes.
Have a relationship, guys. We try to, and you guys probably will laugh when you hear me say this, because I do all the time. Avoid just throwing names around on LinkedIn or Facebook, or wherever you have a connection. If someone needs to meet someone, guys, look at who they're connected with that you already have a relationship with. See if there's some sort of way that you can approach that person that you have a relationship with. Tell them what you're trying to do. Ask them what their relationship is with Lori Davis. You're trying to meet Lori Davis. Lori, I'm picking on you. And guys, springboard off of that. You don't want to just show up, and you don't want to, let's just say Mark Curtis is connected with Lori, but he really doesn't know Lori. Mark is a wonderful person, but it's probably best that you pick somebody that knows Lori, that introduces you to Lori. It carries a lot more. What's that word you use, Rex? Equity, I think, is the proper word to use there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, well, in relation to that, Fernando has a question or a comment. I've tried reaching out to university alumni, which is an excellent way to go, at my target companies. So far, only a recent graduate has responded. How do I get those who might be key contacts for the position to respond? And
Jeff's on that one.
Jeff?
Well, no, my big comment to that is if you have tried to reach out to alumni or people who are working, to try to do an information interview and they don't reach back out to you, they probably maybe have never ever been unemployed and they don't get what you're going through right now.
Mm-hmm.
One day they will,
Yeah.
because they'll be here and then they will get it, because everybody who's on this call will go and give somebody 15 minutes if you reach out the right way. So if you're not getting, if people aren't doing it, you just need to keep trying other people. But also remember, when you're reaching out to people, especially via LinkedIn, if people aren't heavy LinkedIn users, they may not have it set up to receive an email when you try to reach out through there. That's why we say always try to reach out not through LinkedIn. Try to reach out if your email address or phone number is there, because you have a better chance of getting through to the person.
Yeah, when I noticed I wasn't getting a response through LinkedIn, I went through the university alumni page and he was listed there. So I tried messaging him there and still haven't heard back, but we'll see.
And Fernando, another way to do that is when you have a target company, a lot of companies have alumni groups on LinkedIn, people who used to work there. Companies go through cycles of layoffs and whatnot.
Mhm.
You can go to the alumni group and see if anybody on the alumni group from the company matches with the university that you're an alumnus of, and see if they still have contacts within the company. So that's kind of a second stage way to do it, but it's another way to take a look at who's who and who's doing what to get to the same target.
I hadn't thought about that. That's a great idea. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, Jeff, is paying for LinkedIn InMail worth it?
I wouldn't. I mean, I don't know. I don't have the premium version, so I couldn't tell you.
Try it for a month free. At day 28, make your decision whether you're going to continue or not, because otherwise they will bill you for it.
Right, if you don't cancel it before the month's up. Dolores says she's found it worth it. But again, that's on an individual basis. You have to make that determination for yourself.
Right.
I mean, if you do pay for the premium version, I think it's $29 a month or something like that. 32. Okay, you do get LinkedIn Learning. And if you get LinkedIn Learning, then you can get LinkedIn badges. It'd be easier to get the LinkedIn badges that that go along with your profile with tests that you've done. So it may be worth doing for a month or 2 or 3 just to get the training, get the learning. Now, I also will tell you this, if you've got a library card, you should be able to, if you're using Reference USA through your public library, you should also be able, I know through the Dallas Public Library, I can get to lynda.com. So I can watch I can go any of the training sessions on lynda.com through the Dallas Public Library. So check your public library, see what other things they offer. You may be able to get the same training and not have to pay anything.
Louisville Library also has access to lynda.com. That's where I use it.
And for those who aren't up to date, lynda.com is now LinkedIn Learning. It's owned by LinkedIn, which is owned by Microsoft. Ad infinitum, ad nauseum. So, yeah, but that's the free way. Check your library, folks. Lots of stuff there that you don't have to pay for. Not every library has the same offerings, so you have to check. But many libraries, if you have a card at Plano, you can get one at Frisco. If you have one the Colony. You can get one in Frisco and Plano. So there's plenty of interaction there. There are lots of resources. It's almost maddening how many resources are available, but it's just making people aware of it. Let's see. I saw another question here, and I think I got to go back to it.
I have a question. I'd like to know that the experts are on this call, what the different opinions are. If I may.
You go ahead, sir.
Okay.
You've got 1 minute.
Guys, when we're applying for a position and you know who the recruiter is, do you recruiters, do you experts suggest that we reach out to those people and connect with them on LinkedIn? Oh, wow.
I've seen that as a good
Yes,
practice.
I would.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would recommend that, Foster, because if a lot of times when you'll see a job on LinkedIn, it will have the recruiter that posted it to LinkedIn. And if you know them, obviously you should contact them. If you don't know them, try to reach out and get somebody to give you a warm connection, or make a connection yourself and ask them for information about the company. Just a thought.
Okay.
Well, okay. And that leads to the question, is there a better approach to ask for a LinkedIn recommendation from a person that I really did not have a close relationship with? So I guess that addresses the fact that you had an acquaintance at your previous job, but you guys weren't buddies or anything like that. And you're seeking LinkedIn recommendations to boost your score, so to speak. Is there what's a good approach to use?
You know, John, how I would approach that is that a lot of things that people can ask for, if it's done with a lot of courtesy and professionalism, you can get a lot of help from a lot of people. If the relationship is not a first degree, you didn't work with them on a daily basis, I would never, but, and here's the key, they knew your performance, they knew your achievements, and they knew your work. Reaching out to them in LinkedIn and saying that I'm in an active job search right now. May I ask for a recommendation on LinkedIn? You'll get a yes or no, which is fine. And if you get a yes, the question is, how can I help you? Is there something that I can reciprocate for you for a recommendation? Okay.
And reciprocity again, absolutely, Rex, thank you. I was thinking too while you were speaking that if you know enough about them that you could give a, maybe not a big, long, glorious, but a truthful, short recommendation on their LinkedIn profile first, that may earn you a recommendation on your own. So it's reciprocity in reverse, if you will. So that might work as well. Is there a difference in working with an agency recruiter and a corporate recruiter? Who wants to take that one?
I want to ask Lori to start with that question. She's representing the agency recruitment domain.
You know, I have done both corporate recruiting and agency side recruiting. They are different in some respects, but then in others, they're the same. I think, I'm not sure where the person's going with that question, but I think sometimes with agency recruiters, candidates feel like they're just being, it's just a number, and you know, the recruiters are just trying to get their submittal numbers. And I have worked in agencies where that is the case, where the environment is, you know, it's all about numbers of submittals. Sometimes that can land, you know, a candidate to a job, and sometimes not. But I would say, I mean, when working with recruiters, I would use your gut, and you have to, if that person isn't making you feel like they are, as someone said earlier, your advocate, and they're not treating you with respect, especially if you're unemployed, then I would just recommend you don't work with them, whether they are a corporate recruiter or an agency recruiter. Because there's good recruiters out there, and gosh, I know it, guys, there are not great recruiters out there, and they're all in it for themselves. And then there are recruiters, like many of the folks on these panels, and like Locke, you know, who spoke today, you know, who are in it to try and help as best they can, or plug you in, you know, with other people that perhaps can help you. So I would, you know, look at it as a recruiter as, are they working as an advocate for you, just like a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher for your children or what have you. And if they're not treating you with the respect that you deserve as a human being, then I probably would not work with them. And I would not recommend you work with them either. And recruiters know good recruiters.
Right.
And so that's another way that you can network to say, hey, I'm looking for a recruiter who maybe specializes in this. Like this panel will do that to me. Gail Houston reached out last week. She's like, hey, do you know anybody who specializes in this? And we try to help each other so we can help the candidates, you know, such as yourselves. But yeah, good recruiters know good recruiters. And I would definitely leverage that network as well. Does that help?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're at just about done with our time. So a couple of things to wrap this meeting up. First of all, thank you for attending. Secondly, the way I have this slide, the way I have the slide set up is that next week we will have Rex Sowett himself, who's a human resources manager for recruitment and staffing at JAARS, and I can never remember what that acronym means. Sorry, Rex. But he's going to talk about...
It's aviation and radio services.
Okay, thank you. But he's going to talk on the topic of new salary and negotiation strategies, especially during this COVID-19 period. And that'll be at 3 o'clock next Tuesday, the 9th. I'd also like to let you all know and encourage you that we have a Friday morning meeting that is called Reach Up, Reach Out, for people who are really having a rough time emotionally, spiritually, physically, or in any way, depressed or anxious. It's called Reach Up, Reach Out. And if you want to know more about that, it's at 7 o'clock on Friday mornings. You can go to stonebriar.org, and in the home screen, right up top in the middle, you'll see the word Connect. If you hover over that, there's a drop-down menu, and the drop-down menu, the first thing listed is Events. If you click on Events, it'll take you to the screen where you can look up, Reach Out, and we have a Zoom meeting every Friday morning from 7 to 8:30. Any closing comments from Locke, Rex, Foster, or Lori, or Jeff?
I would like to say to keep the relationship. I'm sorry, Locke. I'll be quick. That's tough for me. Keep the relationship involved, guys. That last question. There is a difference, not in the recruiter, but in the process when you're using a third-party recruiter, because the company, and the way they run things nowadays, the company is going to have to pay a fee if they hire you from Lori. That doesn't make Lori a bad person. She still will do everything, because I know Lori, I've known Lori for years. She will do everything she can in her power in order to help endorse you for that opportunity. But a corporate recruiter, which I have been majority of my career, has the ability most times, not all, most times has the ability to go directly to the hiring manager and say, hey, what about this Alvin Donahue guy that I have presented to you for this position? This is what I think, and this is what you told me that you're looking for. Whereas a third-party recruiter does not always have that access. So as you utilize your network, guys, a lot of times we can find out what's what and who knows who and all that sort of thing. I strongly suggest that you dig into these things. I, Rex, Lori, Jeff, all of us on this call, especially Locke, have big networks, and we have ideas of how we may connect with certain people sometimes. So utilize that, guys. Link in. If we're not linked in, please link in with me, Foster Williams, and that's what God called me to do. That's why you guys have to put up with me.
Thank you, and we love you. But your time's up.
I
Locke,
figured
you were going to say something?
I was going to mention again, anybody who wants the slide deck, just send me an email, Frisco Career Transition Workshop, and I'll be happy to send you the whole deck.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm gonna wrap this up in a word of prayer for all of you. So if you just join me for a moment, I'd like to say, Heavenly Father, please bless everybody on this call, those who are struggling to make it through this tough time. Bless them with discernment, with health, with protection, and lead them, please, to the next opportunity, regardless of all this confusion and turmoil that's going on. You're still in charge. You love us, and we depend on that, and we ask you, Lord, to guide us with your mercy and grace through Jesus our Lord. Amen.
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 Hey, thanks everyone. God
Hey,
bless
thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
John.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Locke.
everybody.
Thank you, Foster.
You're welcome, John.